Welcome to the Get Published podcast, sponsored by Brodie Consulting Group. To get more information about our coaching, publishing, executive ghostwriting, and podcast production services, go to getpublishedpodcast.com. Hello, I am Paul Brodie, and thank you for joining us for another episode of the Get Published podcast, where we help authors get published with a proven system that works. Today, we're being joined by Thornton, author of Unleash Your Awesome. Taz, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Paul. It's a pleasure.
Are you ready to get started?
I'm always ready to get started. Let's go for it.
All right. Question number one. What is the one piece of advice that you would give to a first-time author who is currently writing their book?
Pay far more attention to building your audience. You need to build an audience before you put a book out there. There's no point putting a book out there today and expecting that to build your tribe. It needs to be the other way around, or you're just going to be at sea in a massive ocean of authors. So build an audience first.
And I know we're going to talk a little bit more about that in marketing. I'm really looking forward to that because I know prior to the show you were talking about multiple strategies and the fact that you have your background is in PR, marketing, and publishing. So really looking forward to taking a little deeper dive when we get to that question.
Awesome.
What do you feel is the hardest part about getting published?
Now, you see, this is a really interesting one for me to try and answer for you, Paul, because it wasn't hard for me. Neither of my books so far have been self-published. I've got another 3, I think, in the pipeline, and they're both with different publishers. I think it was so easy for me because of actually the answer to question 1, because I'd spent so long building a tribe and building an audience. So by the time I was ready to get out there and put my books out there, and the publishing houses started to look me up, they could see that I was worth taking a punt on. So it wasn't tough for me. I think the hardest thing for some is trying to run before they can walk. Just deciding I want to write a book without having any reason for either people to find them and buy it, or for a publisher to be willing to take a risk with them. So it all ties into the answer to question 1.
Perfect. And now, of course, for the big question, and that is about marketing. So please share a marketing strategy that you have used in your book launches that has worked well, especially with establishing and building your platform.
Do you know, the one strategy that worked really well for both of my books, in fact, Whispers from the Earth, my first book, that's still in, and how many years ago was that launched now, but that's still in the Amazon bestsellers list in its category even now. And Unleash sold out on Amazon 4 times in the first week post-launch, so they both did really well. And the best strategy of anything was teasing. Use your social audiences as much as you possibly can. When you first get that publishing deal, put some PR out about it. Get people cheering for you. Get people waiting. Whet their appetite. So I do things like get teaser quotes from some of the chapters and turn them into memes, do little videos, reading pieces out pre-launch, and just put a really powerful few words out with a little note saying coming soon from. Push, push, push. So by the time that book hits the market, everybody is desperate to grab it. That's my number 1 tip of anything.
So you mentioned using teaser quotes, turning those into memes, and then having coming soon graphics. So how many weeks were you doing that to hype your book?
Pretty much from the time I started writing it. The second I got the publishing deals, I was promoting that on my pages, and not just doing push, 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 I've got this coming up, but this is amazing, I'm so humbled, I'm so overwhelmed, isn't it amazing? So that people get behind you. Don't play the ego trap. Keep it real, keep it human, keep it humble, so that people want to lift you up, people want to encourage you, and they want to support you. And one of the best ways they can support you is by buying that book. So the second I got some full chapters, the second I was writing away and thought, ooh, that thing I've just written, that's a good quote, that's a keeper, I'd do it straight away, get it out there. And you know, if I edited it later and some of them got changed, it doesn't matter, because by the time people get the book, I guarantee they're not going to be scrolling through all those little quote memes on Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn and Insta and checking to see if it's word for word in your book. They'll just be excited to get your book. The second you start writing, the second you have some sound bites, if you like, start using them, start putting them out there.
I love that strategy, and because the great thing is you're doing it as you write in the book, so clearly it's going to be 8, 10, even 12 weeks out where you're able to build that momentum. Now, one thing I wanted to ask you in regards to building that momentum, you mentioned on your pages. So are you talking about Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn? What sources are you talking about specifically that you utilize for this?
Well, when mine came out, Insta wasn't such a big thing, but I will absolutely be working the pants off Instagram for my next few launches. I used predominantly Facebook and Twitter because at the time they had the most momentum. If I was looking at it now, I'd be doing a lot of work on LinkedIn. I think a lot of authors, particularly, are a bit nervous of LinkedIn because people who aren't quite as geeky when it comes to social marketing as I am tend to think of LinkedIn as being this platform for starchy old men and CVs. And it's changed. LinkedIn has taken off its pinstripe suit and its starched shirt, and it's thrown on a pair of jeans and trainers. Your engagement levels on LinkedIn now are head and shoulders above engagement on Facebook. So at the time, I don't know when people are going to be listening to this, but at the time when you and I were originally talking, Paul, where Facebook is capping the amount of people who can see your posts, LinkedIn is doing the opposite. You could have an audience of a relatively small audience on LinkedIn, and if you're putting out good enough content, it could be going to thousands. So I think we need to stop being afraid of social, start looking at the platforms that are available to us, start looking at the content of our book. Who's going to be reading this book? Who is the audience? Where does that audience hang out? And how do you get in front of them? And that's going to be more than Facebook and Insta. So we need to broaden our minds a little bit and be brave enough to leap into some new places.
Well, another thing that you mentioned too is the fact that you already had an established platform before your book came out. So what tips would you have for our listeners to be able to start that platform? Those are just at the starting point, and to be able to build that to the point that they already have a platform going for them by the time they launch their book.
Stop stopping. That's it. Just start. Just start. I mean, don't just start flooding social media with pictures of your dinner, unless you're writing a book on nutrition, that could work. Think about engaging content. And this is one of the issues, I think. There are so many marketers out there at the moment who are saying, tell your story, tell your story, tell your story. But I don't know if you agree, Paul, it's rare that you find a marketer who actually knows how to tell a story. We just know to tell people to tell stories. Because my background is also in journalism, I'm a storyteller. It's what I do. So take a step back, perhaps, look at the people that you follow online. I'm talking online predominantly because then we're in control of it. We can publish at the push of a button. Think about the things that you like to read, you like to consume: video, audio, text, imagery. Think about what makes you stop scrolling and consume that content. How can you apply that to your own posts, your own updates? And think about what's your comfort zone. Some people are going to be happier with text-based content. One of the ladies that I coach, because I do a lot of one-to-one and group coaching as well, one of the ladies I coach is dyslexic, so she gets herself into a spin when she tries to think about typing stuff because she's worried that it won't come out well and people will judge her, or she'll get spelling errors, or people won't understand it. But she's great on video. So what works for you? In an ideal world, mix it up a bit. But if you are terrified of typing stuff, but you're great on video or audio, do more of that, and vice versa. Just get out there. Just stop stopping. Stop procrastinating. Stop coming up with excuses. Think about your mission. And most people writing a book have a mission to serve people in some way. So you need to remember that you cannot serve people if they do not know that you exist. So you have a duty to those people you want to serve to be seen. Take off that cloak of invisibility and let the world see you, so they want to buy your book and so that you can help them.
Well, one of the things that I've seen that's one of the quickest ways to build up your following are two things. One is posting consistently and posting often, and the other part is utilizing hashtags. What are your thoughts on those?
Hashtags, it depends on the platform. Facebook's kind of getting there with hashtags, but they're far more powerful on Instagram,
Yep.
on Twitter, and now on LinkedIn too. You need to, I'm going to get really geeky now. If you want to use things like hashtags, you've got to keep an eye on the algorithm. So if we think about when LinkedIn first launched, we were saying let's use 30 hashtags per post and let's just keep using the same hashtags. And then all the marketeers came in and they started ruining it. So then Instagram changed it. And now they're saying that the optimum is between, say, 12 and 15 hashtags per post, but don't keep using the same ones. So, come up with a bank of hashtags that work for you, keep them in, say, 12 to 15 little blocks on your notes on your iPhone, for instance, and switch and change them. Don't use the same set in 24 hours, and on LinkedIn, don't just think about the hashtags that are just going to bring your peers in. It's about the people that you want to be consuming your content and buying your book. What hashtags are they going to be looking for? What are they going to be searching for? Because I think that's another mistake we make, and it's the same one that so many of us make when we first start using groups, whether that's on Insta or on Facebook or LinkedIn. We dive into the groups that are full of the people who are our competitors instead of starting to swim in the lakes that are full of the people who are going to be our consumers. So we need to think about that too. So yeah, hashtags at the minute are great, but if somebody's listening to this podcast, I don't know, 2 or 3 years down the line, it might have changed. So take the concept of what Paul and I are discussing about consistency, getting out there, but make sure you're up to date. Make sure, Google it, if Google's still the one by the time you're searching. It probably will be. Just Google what's going to get me results on that platform. Something will pop up.
Yeah, and you can actually research hashtags as well and see what's trending. There's a few
Of
different
course.
specific sites for that. So it's one of those things where you can get the mix of hashtags. And I love the fact that you mentioned 12 to 15 hashtags, because a year ago, people were utilizing 20 to 26 hashtags. And I'm
Of
going,
course,
that's
yeah.
way too much.
And it's the numbers of hashtags as well, isn't it? So, up to 30 when it first came out worked as a marketing strategy. But also you've got to think about how many people are following that hashtag. Another common mistake people make is using all the popular hashtags.
Yep.
So if you're going to start using a hashtag with 1 million plus followers, again, it's like we said right at the beginning, you're at sea with millions of others. Nobody's going to see you. So you need to be picking the hashtags that are still absolutely relevant, but with a slightly smaller following. So you've got more of a chance of popping up on somebody's feed. Mix it up. Sometimes our brain will say bigger is better, but in reality, it's not. Somewhere in the middle is a better mix.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate that. I really enjoyed taking a little deeper dive into, because I'm like you, I can get really geeky about it because there's so many
Yeah.
different tactics that you can use. And of course, one of the ones that we talked about before the show started was getting on podcasts and getting out of your comfort zone, because you got to run this like a business. And no matter if you're going traditional, hybrid, or doing it yourself, you've got to market your book.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Both of mine have publishers and they both have promotional teams, and that's great, but people buy people. So people are going to be looking at the stuff that you've put out more than the stuff that the publishers are going to be putting out. Your publishers' PR departments will be going more broad brush, whereas you have an audience. If you've done it right, you have an audience, a tribe of advocates who are already hanging on to your every word, but they might not be following updates from the publisher. So it's that, if you can do it that way, it's great, because you've got that broad brush approach as well as your own really niched area to focus on.
Well, and with your books being traditionally published, did they reach out to you, or did you reach out to them first?
I reached out to them first. I started looking to see who I wanted to be published by. And, there's no science behind this for me at all, except for gut feel. And both of the publishers that felt right for me, for the offerings that I had, immediately went for it. There was, I expected, particularly when my first book was published with John Hunt Publishing, because they offer some hybrid options as well. And I thought, well, I've never published a book before. I'm an unknown in terms of the publishing world. But they didn't, because of that tribe. They went, no, full publishing deal. We want to give you all the support. You don't need to pay us a penny. Let's do this. And it was the same when I went with Motivational Press. For my second book, I went with my gut feel. I found the publisher who seemed to have the ethos that I was looking for and seemed to be publishing books in a sector that most fit with mine. And so again, I was really lucky. Both occasions they went, yeah, we want you pretty much straight away.
And I love that you mentioned trust in your gut. That's one of the main things I talk about with my prospective clients for my hybrid publishing company. I tell them, hey,
Yeah.
trust your gut at the end of the day. If it doesn't feel right for you to work with me, then
Mm.
don't. But
Yeah.
trust your gut. I mean, most of our clients end up, yeah, this feels right, because that's the
Yeah.
biggest thing you have to do as an author. You have to trust your gut. And if your spidey
Yeah.
senses are tingling and it doesn't feel
Hmm.
right, don't do it.
Yeah. Well, talking to you for a few minutes, I can't imagine anybody's spider senses going off with you, Paul, because I think you've got the right ethos. So
Well,
that's a good
I like to keep
recipe.
it real, and as I mentioned prior to this show, I really wanted to take a deep dive into marketing because of your background, because you're giving a ton of value to our listeners right now, with specifically mentioning free strategies that you can use. None of this costs anything except for time and research, and that is one of the
Yeah.
best opportunity cost investments that you can take. Is research hashtags, utilize social media, start to build your audience, and then go on podcasts. You could literally have a
Yeah.
virtual assistant on Fiverr find you a list of probably 200 to 500 podcasts, if not more, specifically in your niche area, and then reach out to
Easily.
those people. Set it up on a CRM where it maybe costs you like $30 for the software, and just
Yeah.
reach out on a general email and just go, hey, this is what I have going on. This is the value I think I can provide. I mean, this is free publicity. Take advantage
Yeah.
of it.
Yeah. And again, by the time you've built your tribe, if you put the effort into building a following, that will eventually flip and they will start approaching you. I mean, in the early days, I was approaching podcasters, and now I get, I don't know, perhaps somewhere between 3 and 5 offers to be on a podcast every week. And I can't do them all because, frankly, there's only 24 hours in the day. But if I hadn't put the legwork in first, this wouldn't be happening. It's all entirely possible, but you've got to put the legwork in. If your book and your audience matters enough to you, then you'll do it. It's that simple.
Well, and that's exactly how we connected. So my
Mm.
team sends out connections to authors across several specific countries: the UK, the United States, New Zealand, Canada, and Australia, because that is mainly our listener base and it's our client base. So when we reach out to people, we're like, hey, we'd love to have you on the show. This is the value that we feel is provided. But you didn't have to say yes to be on the show, but it was a good fit because we were talking
Yeah.
about publishing. And how did we
Hmm.
utilize that? We utilized the power of LinkedIn, where the only thing it
Yeah.
cost for us to connect and to get you on the show was a little bit of time and just making sure
Yeah.
that it worked with our schedules.
Yeah. Perfect. And of course, it ticks the box for me because I can give something back too. It's a no-brainer.
Well, and there's one final follow-up question I'd like to ask about marketing, if I may, and that is,
Of
you
course.
mentioned that you built your platform. So if you don't mind me asking, what was your, just general, what was your platform and your followers when these publishing companies said, yeah, you have a great following, we would love to work with you?
When my first book came out, I was already working as a coach, and I was in quite early days of being a speaker. Since then, it's grown. I'm now a global speaker. I go all over the world, and that's amazing, again, because I put the work into building the audience. But because my first book was a lot more spiritual, it had to do with channeling, shamanism, meditation, and it was kind of my take on what the traditional teaching stories from our lands over here might have been if our original spirituality hadn't been eroded so much. And so I had quite a following in terms of spirituality and shamanism in the UK. I was speaking at a lot of niche conferences. I was teaching that a lot. I was running courses and programs. So because that was quite a niche area, by the time I wanted to publish that book, it fit. And the idea for the book was quite different to anything out there. So it ticked all the boxes for them. And my audience grew from there. By the time Unleash came out, my platform had grown. I'd grown a much bigger reputation, bigger and better reputation as a coach, as a speaker, as a trainer. And so it again for them it was a no-brainer. I'd had a lot of awards. I'd done I was named the UK's best female coach. I just this week was nominated for a National Diversity Award. I'd done a lot of radio, I'd done a lot of TV, and so it all meshed together beautifully. But again, I cannot stress this enough. All of those bigger opportunities, whether it's speaking gigs, whether it's TV, whether it's radio, it all came from social media first. You know, journalists are, and I used to be one, so I can say this, journalists are inherently lazy. So if you've got ready-made stories that you're putting out there every day and they think you're going to be somebody worth featuring, you've got a much better chance of growing your reach and getting beyond social and into some of those more traditional areas, those areas where it's seen as third-party endorsement, if you put in the good, juicy stuff out on social. Use some of those other hashtags to find journalists looking for stories too. Use things like journo request. Follow some of the groups on Facebook and LinkedIn where you have journalists literally saying, we're doing this story, we need somebody who can comment on this, this and this. Become an expert in your field. So in a nutshell, I started out as talking very much about spiritual matters, but because my background's in corporate, I was able to put more of a right brain, more of a left brain spin onto some of the right brain ideals. So I bridged that gap. So I was creating the kind of content and information that was interesting, that was relevant, and that was just that little bit different. You can't be afraid of having an opinion in this game. You've got to be brave enough to have an opinion. You know, one of the things I say to people is that if you want to just be beige, if you want to blend into the background, that's okay. Beige is not going to offend anybody, but it's nobody's favorite color either.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're absolutely right with that. I mean, you do have to stand for something. You have to have views. And is anyone going to agree with you? No. But you're not looking for that. You're looking for the target market that does agree with you because they're going to connect with you. They're going to kind of vibe with the tribe, so to speak. And Precisely. You're going to be able to build those relationships.
And keep it real, too. That's another really important tip. I think, you know, the phrase personal brand gets bandied about a lot. And I coach a lot of people on personal brand, but it's not the same as designing a logo. Your personal brand is essentially you. Mm-hmm. So don't try to rock a personality or a look or a vibe that isn't you at your core. It's too difficult to try and be out there 24/7 pretending to be somebody you're not. So whatever your own beliefs are, whatever your own opinion, whatever your own ethos, own it and walk it. That's your personal brand. Your personal brand is the version of you that you put out to the world. And that's much easier to carry if you keep it absolutely aligned to the truth of who you are. Be real, be you.
And one site that I'll mention before we go to our next question, and that is for those that are looking to help media, there is a great website called helpareporter.net. And you can actually sign up for that, and they will send you emails every day about different queries that they need. It's anything from general information, travel, business, and it's a great free resource. I get emails every day, so if there's an opportunity there that I can help out or contribute, it's just a great way to get your name out there, especially if you're a published author, best-selling author. It really does help add that authority level, and it doesn't cost anything but time.
It's amazing, and actually that's where Twitter is still good now. You still get lots of journalists and key opinion leaders on Twitter. So use it. Everybody's saying Twitter's dead. It isn't. You just need to use it in a different way. And getting in touch with journalists, with feature editors, and with celebrities who might align with your cause. Twitter's alive for that.
Well, let's talk about your favorite book. So what is your favorite book? And what was the number one thing that you learned from it?
You know, my favorite book tends to change every week, Paul, according to what I've just read. The one I've chosen to mention today is Shoe Dog by Phil Knight. It's the story of the creation of Nike as a brand. Yeah. Have you read it?
I have, and it's an awesome book.
Yeah. Amazing, amazing book. I grabbed it at an airport when I was going off to do a speaking gig in, where was I? Milan at the end of last year. And I just grabbed it on a whim through the airport because I wanted something to read on the plane. And it blew me away. His conversational style, it was so down to earth. And the biggest, it's full of lessons, isn't it, that book? Full of life lessons. I love that it bridges kind of the human condition and really sharp business. And I think it was about keep going, You've got to be brave enough to keep following your dreams, even if you fear that they won't work. But the big overarching message, and this really spoke to me, is that if you want it enough, there's always a way. That's just beautiful.
And for a final question, what is your favorite quote and why?
I'm going to cheat a bit here, Paul, and use one of mine. This is one I've been using quite a lot lately, and it's really simple. Cash follows credibility. I hear of so many people, particularly self-employed, and they're going on and on and on about how they can't make ends meet and haven't got enough clients coming in, and they can't just get a leg up, and maybe they need to go and get a job again, and they're not putting the work into building their credibility. So things like books, they're a beautiful way to build your credibility. Things like generating PR, they're a great way to build your credibility. Being of use through social, great way to build your credibility. Podcasts, vodcasts, writing Medium articles, all of that stuff. Build your credibility to the point where people are desperate to work with you because they know you are the person who will understand them, who will get them, who will be able to help them get to the next level. So for me, the quote, cash follows credibility.
Well, Taz, I want to thank you for being a guest on the show. What is the best way for people to find you online?
You can find me on pretty much all the social media channels. Just search for Taz Thornton and I'll pop up. Don't bother on Snapchat. I am there, but I won't respond because I'm not 12 years old. Short-sighted. If Gary Vee was listening to this, he'd kick me, I'm sure. I'm everywhere apart from Snapchat. And you can also find me at tazthornton.com.
Taz, thank you once again for being on the show, and I wish you all the best in your author journey ahead.
You too, Paul. Thank you so much.
Thanks again for joining us today. To learn more about how you can be featured in our brand new Get Published business book, go to getpublishedpodcast.com.